Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashum Yahushai, Bahashum Ruach Kodash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, in grace and peace to you elect on the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rakhaya from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. And tonight, I want to get into this interview done by Tucker Carlson and Dennis Kushnick, essentially getting into the end of American sovereignty, which we already understand that America was never sovereign. It's always been governed behind the scenes through Amalek, which we refer to as the small hats for YouTube purposes. But Amalek has always had his hand in American affairs since its inception. Throughout the years, Amalek has used America as a great tool of enforcement and consumption. But now all that's coming to an end. Now that the true rulers of America are being exposed alongside their wicked enterprises. The same level of consumption is no longer working on the American populace. Now that the truth has been proclaimed, that same consumption, of bread, circus, and propaganda that the elites used to use in times past is no longer working because knowledge has increased pursuing the prophecy in Daniel the 12th chapter. And now the average American is starting to ask questions concerning this society and the way that the government is being ran. That same bread, circus, and propaganda is no longer effective. Neither is America the same enforcer it used to be. America is no longer the top enforcer in the planet Earth. Now through the rise of the BRICS nations, America is no longer the top dog. Now, America has formidable enemies in Russia, China, and now Iran, which has essentially become the next world superpower. So just want to get into a couple of minutes of this video because this is the talking point in the planet Earth. The talking point in the planet Earth has shifted from bread, circus, and BS, to actual world affairs, taking place. The conversation has shifted to prophecy, and this whole conversation is really leading into the prophecy in Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, about the least of the flock leading them out, which we'll get here in a second. I just want to play a couple of minutes of this video. I might stop it here and there. The full video is on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter, so I can't really...
Dennis Kucinich, thank you for doing this. So a lot of us who've been paying half attention keep hearing that there's an effort in the Congress to, in some basic sense, merge the U.S. military with the IDF, with the Israeli military. Same with our intelligence services. It's hard to believe that could be true. Is it true? What do you know about it?
Well, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027, Section 219, has a provision that provides for the integration of the IDF and the U.S. military at the top, most sensitive levels of our military operations, and that is a fact. Now, when you have an integration and you say you're going to eliminate duplication, that's a merger, and so they're merging. And the
U.S. military and Israeli military.
Yeah, and in specific areas like artificial intelligence and autonomous functioning of vehicles, that will increase the kill efficiency, right?
Yes.
In quantum sensing, that deals with very sophisticated data and will blur the distinction between offense and defense, okay? Cyber electronic war is another area they want to merge in, which you can't really, if you take AI and you match it with these sophisticated technologies, you expand the ability to hurt people, really, to kill people.
And what this merger, is doing ultimately, which the world doesn't understand, but we understand, through prophecy. But what this merger is ultimately doing is leading America into this third world war, where it's going to be destroyed, all right, by Russia, China, and Iran, all right, by thermonuclear missiles. Scriptures say here in Jeremiah the 50th chapter and the 45th verse, it says, "Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord that he taketh against Babylon." All right, and America is Babylon. All right, it's Babylon the Great. Okay, it says that he taketh against Babylon, and his purpose is that he purposed against the land of Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. All right, and the least of the flock is referring to Amalek. All right, which are the small hats, that not a Jew over there, and his people. All right, the Israelis, as it were. All right, that is what the least of the flock is, and what the least of the flock is going to do is draw America out, all right, into this third world war, wherein he will be made, the habitation will be made desolate with them. All right, because all of this is leading toward the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat. Okay. This is Joel chapter 3, because ultimately where Israel is going to lead Babylon is to the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat, all right, where the judgment is going to take place. All right, it says, "For behold, in those days," Joel 3, "For behold, in those days and in that time, and I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat. And I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land." All right, so right now what the Lord is in the process of doing is gathering all the nations, all right, into that land or that valley of Yahweh-Shaphat, all right, which means the Lord's judgment. And Yahweh-Shaphat is referring to this land here in the Persian Gulf. All right, all nations are being drawn to this area, ultimately for that battle of Armageddon. That final war, in a sense, which will be World War III, wherein ICBM nuclear missiles will be shot by Iran, China, Russia, and Babylon. All right, and it's going to leave this area in Babylon in complete desolation. Babylon will be completely decimated as a result. But this is what that merger is leading to. All right, that merger is ultimately leading into America's judgment. It's truly leading to the end of American sovereignty. All right, and it's beautiful because on the world stage, Israel and or Amalek and Babylon have isolated themselves. They're by themselves as the world, as the world comes together essentially, against Babylon. Amalek and Babylon have separated themselves on the world stage, isolated themselves, and they think that they'll be able to conquer everybody else. They think that they're going to be able to enforce the same bullshit that they've been able to enforce in times past, but it's not going to work like that anymore. All right, in true idiotic fashion, the so-called white man has sold his trump card. The trump card of the Babylonian, the American, at one point in time was his capability, or his nuclear capability. But like an idiot, he sold it to the other nations, and now Iran, India, Russia, China, all right, and these different nations that are against Babylon have the very same nuclear capability, if not greater. So now they're in between the rock and the hard place. They're stuck, and it's really no way out. And the prophets have been saying, have been warning of this, prophesying of this since the late 60s. Starting with our elders apostles. They've been warning against this for years. And the beautiful thing is that, they just can't escape this fate. They can't escape the fate. You best believe they heard the report. Let's go back to Jeremiah 50. They heard the report. It's not like they didn't hear it. Our elders and apostles have a testimony about how, Edomite rode up to him in a black limousine asking how we got this knowledge. How they got the knowledge. They worked so hard to keep it from them. The elites have heard the testimony. That's why they're moving with this legislation. All right, to get this mark of the beast set in place. That's why they're moving with great swiftness and urgency. Because the report has been heard. This is Jeremiah 50 and verse 43. The king of Babylon have heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. All right, the report has been heard. At this point, throughout the four corners of the earth. And the king of Babylon is in pains. The true kings, which are Amalek, the 13 banking families, those who control and mismanage the resources, your Oppenheimers, your DuPonts, your Gettys, your Bilderbergs, and so on and so forth. All right. They've heard the report, and pains are taking hold of them. Now they're moving with great swiftness and wrath to enforce their ideologies. But as the scriptures say, when they're about to fill their belly, the Lord is going to turn it all upon their head. The Lord is going to turn up on their ass, man. The Lord is going to turn up on their ass right when they're getting ready to fill up their belly. And it's beautiful because they can't escape this fate. They can't escape it. They've tried hard to escape it. They've tried hard to maintain.
They want to merge missile defense,
they can do about it.
Space defense, directed energy. It's a whole range of things, and biological technology, including potential biological warfare. What could go wrong, right? See, and I look at it this way, Tucker. The first issue is American sovereignty. I don't care, Israel or whoever. We need to maintain our sovereignty. We cannot cause another country to be involved in the decision makings that relate to the national security of the United States of America.
Yes.
We have to be singular and solitary in that regard. Unfortunately, this provision in this bill, all the safeguards go out the window. And essentially, it's a merger, and one step from a merger is an acquisition. I am, yeah, really. Think about that. And think about this too in this context. We had kind of a kind of a practice run of this merger in Iran. Look what happened. The Israel, the United States at the behest of Israel goes in and attacks Iran.
Yeah.
Working with Israel on this, it ended up being a disaster on so many different levels. So that's what we've already found out from that kind of a cooperation, let's say. And now imagine if you get two parties together and they go forward from there, what could go wrong? The United States must remain sovereign. We must not in any way cede this idea of Israel being integrated, the militaries of the U.S. and Israel.
But they can't, like we read in Jeremiah 50. All right, the least of the flock will draw them out. Okay, it's not a matter of if. It's not a matter of endeavoring to maintain American sovereignty. All right, it just won't
integrated.
According
the other thing is,
America will
it's unconstitutional. I mean, really,
by Amalek.
They bypassed the treaty mechanism. We joined NATO as a treaty.
Yes.
There's no treaty here. It's just in legislation. This should be going to the Senate, at least, for approval. Not so, just to put in legislation, make it happen. And also, people, the president's the commander-in-chief of U.S. Armed Forces, each of whom take an oath to defend the Constitution. first of all, Israel doesn't have a constitution. Secondly, they're not taking any oath to the United States of America to protect our interests. So what is this about? Why are we becoming more vulnerable to a nation whose military values are so distinct from ours?
Well, I mean, there's so many levels here. I mean, to address that, of all the militaries you could merge with, why pick the only one on the planet that's currently committing genocide? I mean, it does seem grotesque of all the militaries on the planet.
Right.
It does seem like this changes the dynamic between the United States and Israel completely were it to become law, because as it presently stands, the United States is Israel's benefactor. Israel can't fight 7 wars or whatever, how many fronts they have at any given time without the United States paying for most of it, which we do. And so we can withdraw that support and thereby control, at least theoretically, control Israel's behavior. We never have, but we could. This would, if it becomes law, integrate the militaries to such an extent that the United States would actually be at the mercy of Israel. So Israel withdraws technology and the United States military is hamstrung. So it would actually...
Damn, you see it. You see it. It's all coming into play. All right, it's all coming into play. It's Isaiah 55. And verse 11, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereunto I sent it. The words of the Lord went out void, man. All of the words of the Lord are being accomplished. Every single prophecy, every single word is being accomplished. And now we're starting to see how the Lord is stringing together these events. It's beautiful. Because now, what is the Lord doing? The Lord has a lot of heat surrounding the Persian Gulf, surrounding the valley of Yehoshaphat. All right, because as you see, the Strait of Hormuz is right there. All right, alongside the Persian Gulf, in the valley of Yehoshaphat. And right now, the Lord has a lot of heat surrounding that area. America just lost a war to Iran. Just lost a war to Iran. And now Iran has been pulling the strings concerning the Strait of Hormuz, and or England. You could, some brothers, say that England is pulling the strings concerning the Strait of Hormuz. All right, but nonetheless, that area has a lot of heat surrounding it, and it's getting ready to get a whole lot hotter as the Lord continues to draw the nations unto this one central point. All right, Yahweh's judgment. Now we're starting to see how the Lord is stringing together.
Put Israel in the driver's seat
and bringing.
That's right.
Bringing everyone.
100% correct.
Point,
and as such, it's adverse to the national security interests of the United States of America. We cannot be in a situation where there's no oversight. Congress is out of the picture once this thing passes.
What does that mean? How?
What it means is that this is run in the Defense Department with a coordinator, and that just like the daily business of the Department of Defense moves on, this becomes part of the daily business. This integration, this coordination.
So no more votes. No more votes.
No, not on these matters. No, and even more important is this. The National Defense Authorization Act authorizes $1.5 trillion annually. 80% of the discretionary budget of the United States of America is now going for military. I mean, that's horrific to begin.
80% of America's 80%. Discretionary budget, total discretionary budget, is going to the military?
Discretionary budget of the United States of America is about $1.9 trillion. We can spend money on education, we can spend money on healthcare, we can spend money on food, nutrition programs.
Infrastructure.
We can spend money on education, we can spend money on healthcare, we can spend money on food, nutrition programs, infrastructure.
But you can't, because war is at hand. They can't spend that money on anything else because war is imminent, and everybody can see it except for the average stupid American. Everybody can see it though on a world stage that where America is headed is war. They can't afford to spend their money on infrastructure. They can't afford to spend their money on food and schooling. All right, because all of that is getting ready
Infrastructure,
to pass.
yes,
You know,
or
they have
we
to
can
spend their
choose
money
to spend money on the
on what's at
military.
hand,
And
which
President
is
Trump
war.
has made his own case that, well, you know, we've got to protect our country, but there's questions as to whether this is in our national security interest. And $1.5 trillion annually, that is a 67% increase over the previous year. The budget was $900 billion. Now it's $1.5 trillion. Think of that increase of $600 billion in 1 year. Plus, we now have a Department of War. Plus, Israel would then have access not just to the $4 billion that we give them in military assistance. They have access to the whole Megillah, to everything. We will be opening up the possibility of Israel having influence over a $1.5 trillion annual budget.
I feel sick hearing this. First of all, we just lost a war with Iran,
Right.
which has an economy, you know, of the size of an American state. Okay, so you would think at that point someone would say, let's not continue feeding a system that is failing. Let's stop and assess where the money went the first time before we, you know, up the budget. Right? I mean, clearly what we're doing isn't working. Right.
You would think.
Okay. And this give
You would think, but all of the wise men of Edom are failing. You know, there is no more wisdom in teaming. You know, the Lord is causing their counsel to fail. You know, and it's beautiful because even, you know, these Americans can see they're not even a part of the defense, you know, military, you know, they're not a part of, you know, the military structure. But even they can see that what they've been trying is failing. You know, they just lost a war, you know, to Iran, which is something that would have never been thought of years ago. But America's losing its enforcement, it's losing its luster. And it's only downhill from here for Babylon. You know, but with that being said, Lord, once that final, we give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh.